Everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I've talked about a couple times. This is just an updated version of what I've been talking about. I'm going to be talking about head covering. I'm going to be reading verses and all that good stuff. I already deleted the videos that I have done previously just because I felt like they were not correct, and my views have changed just a little bit, and I did not want to get that confused. So we're going to go ahead and start reading the scripture. And I'm going to go through it verse by verse just so that everyone can understand. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinance as I delivered them to you. So these two verses is basically just Paul establishing his authority with the church of Corinth. The second verse is basically just, telling them that he is proud of them for obeying this part of the scripture and listening to what he was saying. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So that's the establishment of the headship. And headship is basically just the establishment of the authority between the gender roles in the Bible. I'm just going to go ahead and add this small part. There's only two genders, that is male and female. That's all God ever created. And this will go hand in hand with traditional marriage. I'll do a video on that separately very soon, I hope. Every man praying or prophesying with his head covered dishonoreth his head. So a man is not supposed to wear anything on top of his head in church, praying, prophesying, preaching, evangelizing. Whatever he is doing for God, he is not supposed to cover his head, because he is the glory of God. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head, for that is all one as if she were shaven. So this is basically saying the exact opposite. A woman is supposed to cover her head in church, corporate worship, and in my personal opinion, when she's praying to God, because it says praying or prophesying. A lot of people just say it's corporate worship, but I have to take that a little farther, because it just says right there praying or prophesying. And what it talks about at the end of the verse, for that is all one as if she were shaven. The women in these days, the days of Paul, the days of Corinth, the women who would shave their heads were the prostitutes and the satanic temples that would sell their bodies for offerings, basically. And it was seen as shameful for a woman to have short or bald hair. And Paul is just comparing the two. He's saying it's shameful for a woman not to cover her head, just as shameful as it is for a woman to shave or cut her hair. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. Now, a lot of people say that this verse is in here not because Paul is repeating himself, but because of the women of Rome. It was a fashion statement to have short or bald hair. Bald head, not bald hair, sorry. So that's why that is in there. So it says, for if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. So it's basically saying, if it's not shameful for a woman in your culture not to have hair, then she doesn't need to cover it, because her glory is her hair. But if she has hair and it's shameful for her to, if it's shameful for her, then she needs to cover it. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of the man. So Paul is not repeating himself over and over in these verses. He's just wanting us to understand fervently that God is the above authority over anyone. And above us is man. And he's wanting us to understand that man is the glory of God, and that the only glory that should be shown is God's glory. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman created for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power over her head because of the angels. Now this verse, because of the angels, I made a video on it, and I kept that video. I think I kept it. Basically, that's just saying, angels are observant. They are observant beings. They watch us, watch how we're going to react. And this is just another reason why we cover our heads, to show them that we are, under the authority of God. Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman, but all things of God. Judge in yourselves, is it comely, though a woman pray unto God uncovered? Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? So this verse, this is where a lot of people say, okay, it's talking about hair, we can just drop it. And that's just not true. Paul is comparing our natural hair to our synthetic covering. He's saying, does nature itself teach us that a woman and a man should be uncovered and covered? I mean, that's right there. You can't justify it. There's nothing you really can say to try to go around that. But if women have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. So this is where I've kind of changed my view, okay? So I used to cover my hair fully. I used to wear these really, really, really big 40 by 40 square scarves to cover my entire head. And that's not what Paul tells us to do. He doesn't tell us to cover all of our hair. He just says to cover the top of our head, the way I am right now, the top of our head. And that's why he put that in there, because he wanted us to know, hey, you can still show your hair. Your hair is still important to God, and he still wants you to feel loved. That's what he's trying to tell us there. That's why I show my hair. Yes, it's very short, I know. I'm trying to grow it out, but that's another story. But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the church of God. So this isn't saying that, this isn't saying, well, I guess if somebody's trying to start contentious arguments, then you don't have to do this. That's not what this is saying. This is just warning us not to start contentious arguments over this scripture. Don't try to, hey, you're going to go to hell. That's what Paul's telling us. This isn't an ordinance. This isn't a sin not to cover your hair. We do it as a symbol. It's kind of like baptism. The thief on the cross, he wasn't baptized, but he was able to go to heaven because it was a symbol of salvation, but he wasn't baptized. And it's the same thing right here. It's not an ordinance. Now, baptism is an ordinance of God because it is an outward symbol of salvation. But the difference is head covering, you can be saved without head covering. Head covering is not any type of symbolism of salvation. It's just a type of symbolism of headship. Okay, now that we've got that through, I want to go ahead and go through the original terms in Greek. So the word covered and uncovered. The word covered in verse 5, when it talks about a woman covering her hair, a lot of people say, well, that can be used. A covering can be anything. Your hair. It's obviously saying your hair is your covering. But that's not true, because the word that Paul uses in the original Greek is kalupto, which means to veil, to conceal, or to hide something. So it really makes no sense to say that this is talking about your hair when Paul is clearly telling us that we need to conceal something. Our hair doesn't conceal enough. Our hair is our glory and our head is our glory. So it doesn't really conceal what it needs to. That's what Paul is saying. Your hair is your glory, and you don't conceal your glory with your hair because your hair is already your glory. That makes no sense. So, and another argument is that Paul is being inconsistent about what he says, and because he repeats himself over and over and over, and basically, he said people say he's being inconsistent because of how he says, "But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head." Prayeth or prophesieth is insinuating that you would take something off, And then he says in verse 15, a lot of people take that out of context. But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. So people say, well, it makes no sense how Paul is saying it's a covering that be taken off, but then he says your hair is your covering. But the Greek terminology for the word covering in verse 15 and the word covering in verse 5 are two different words. And Greek is not English. We all know this. This is basic English. So what I mean by that is this term in English, covering, can mean tons of things. But it only means one thing in Greek. One thing. Well, one thing that can mean certain things, like veil, hide, conceal. That all means the same thing in Greek, but in English it can mean different. And that's why it is so important to be able to interpret the Bible correctly. Okay. I think that's about it for the covering. Now, I want to go through my testimony a little bit and how I started head covering. So my head covering testimony started, my hair's wanting to stand up a little bit. My head covering testimony started probably either a little over a year ago or just at a year. And I went through several types of coverings. I did the turban style for a long, long time, for almost a year. I did it for probably 8 months, and I had to quit because it was giving me seizures. And I believe the Lord used that to solidify in my heart that I'm not supposed to cover all of my hair, but I didn't listen. So I went to square scarves, and I became so legalistic about head covering that it was dangerous for me. And the Lord opened my eyes, and I started covering with just the small bandanas. And I believe that a woman is supposed to cover the top of her head and let her hair hang out of her covering on both sides. I just believe that is biblical. Our hair is our natural covering, but it doesn't cover up our glory because our hair is our glory, if that makes sense. So I want to show you a couple of coverings that I wear. And I thought it was the perfect time because I got my coverings in today. So now I have a lot of coverings, and I have a lot because I cover all the time. I don't just cover while praying or prophesying, and that is not something that Paul has told us to do. So I believe that comes in whether you want to or not. And I just choose to because, the word ordinance in this scripture is talking about the traditions of God. And the traditions of God were women covering their hair. I mean, if you look at Mary, she covered her hair. If you look at Ruth, she covered her hair. And there's so many women in the Bible that covered their hair, and I just feel like it's a godly thing to cover your hair. So I'm going to try to open this. Now, I'm not, like I said, I'm not legalistic about this, so I believe in wearing bright colors. This is pink. It's not peach. It's pink. The lighting in here is just terrible. So these are very small bandanas that I've decided to take a part of, and it's been quite a journey. So let me get this off and just show you how short they are, just to give you an idea for if you're new to head covering, new to head covering, maybe you would like to get something like this. They're very small, and I got this for like $12 on Amazon. I got a whole pack of, I think, 12. And they're 22 by 22 inches. So they're very small. I wear from 15 to 22 by 22. So I love them. They're very comfortable to wear. And that's about it for the video I have. I will tell you this. It irks me really, really bad to see women putting other women down for not covering and for covering. I used to be a woman that would put other women down, okay? I mean, it's shameful, and I hate to admit it, but I used to be one of the women who would tell women that they were sinning because they wouldn't cover their hair. And I don't believe that way. I'm not legalistic anymore. The Lord has opened my eyes, and I'm so beyond grateful that He has. But this is a warning to you. Do not get legalistic with how you cover. Do not tell women that they are sinning simply because they don't cover. Covering is a precious, beautiful, beautiful thing that can be turned into a hateful, evil, awful thing if we do it. And we don't want that for our lives. We don't want that for other women who want to start their journey. So please, please remember that this is not an ordinance. It is a godly tradition that we must follow. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a blessed day.